Yeah, good evening, Tricia. This is the second time the homeowners put up this nativity display. Some like it, some don't. Take a look here. This right here, that's baby Jesus. Well, at least the zombie version, not what you're traditionally used to seeing him depicted as in a manger. The owner here tells me all he wanted was a nativity scene. Driving by, you might think this is just another run-of-the-mill Christmas yard display. Get a little bit closer. It is a Christmas display, but it's most certainly not run-of-the-mill.
I wanted a nativity scene.
Not just any nativity scene. Yes, it has Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, but in this case, they're zombies.
I had been talking about the zombie scene, nativity scene, for a long time.
This is the second time Jason Dixon has put up the display in Sycamore Township. It's the second time it's drummed up some controversy.
My father hates it, and the other neighbors, they drive by and give me thumbs up.
Last year, he battled back and forth with Sycamore Township officials who ordered the decoration to come down. It ended up staying up.
This year, I got all the paperwork and how it was wrote out, and it says as long as it's not over 200 square foot, that I can have it without a permit, and it's about 65 square foot.
Dixon says he hopes the endless cars and visitors take away a notion of free speech.
Now this comes as another nativity scene controversy is brewing in Franklin County, Indiana. That First Amendment lawsuit led the county commission to pass an ordinance allowing residents of Franklin County to place their own display, whatever it may be, for $25. The plaintiff did just that, including George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and the Statue of Liberty, all huddled around a manger containing the Bill of Rights. The group, the Tri-State Free Thinkers, spoke to us tonight about the lawsuit.
We just want to be treated equally, and we want everybody to be treated equally. This isn't Christian persecution. We're not trying to pick on Christians. We're just trying to eliminate Christian privilege, and we want Christians, Jewish, Islam, Hindus, atheists to all be treated equally.
Most residents we spoke to feel the original nativity display posed no problems.
Controversy continues in Collins after thousands of residents packed Main Street last night to support the city's religious Christmas decorations.
It was a reaction to a legal complaint alleging that religious symbols in Collins violate the separation of church and state. Amanda Lebreau spoke to the group behind that complaint today. She joins us now with their side of the story.
The opinion from residents at last night's rally in Collins was overwhelmingly to support leaving the religious decorations in the city's public park. But according to the attorney from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, that popular opinion may not matter.
We gotta fight. Look, it's time to draw the line. It's time to put some people on the wall.
It's a typical scene, according to Freedom from Religion Foundation attorney Elizabeth Cavell, when a local government in a largely religious city gets a complaint about separation of church and state.
Having the government take any action that would make them more religiously neutral or correct a state church violation is often not very popular, and there's a lot of outcry.
Satan has already been defeated.
This is a majority, and this is America.
And that majority was out in force in Collins to oppose the legal complaint asking the city to take down its religious symbols in the public park.
It's just a small town, a southern town that they think that they can bully and make us do what they want us to do.
But Cavell says it's not what her foundation wants, it's what the Constitution mandates.
If the park is as it appears to be from the photographs that we've received, then as long as it stays in that form, it remains a legal liability for the city. The overall effect of having a Christian public park on city property is a constitutional violation.
There's not only religious pictures out there, there's also secular, so there's something for everyone.
But even thousands supporting in the street doesn't mean the decorations will stay in the park.
It might feel to the majority in Collins like every single person in Collins, Mississippi is a Christian and wouldn't object to this display. It might feel like that, but it's not true. I understand that there is a lot of popular outcry about keeping the religious displays on public property, but that's irrelevant to whether or not these displays are lawfully on city property.
Hello, I'm Todd Starnes. President Obama took a break from saving the icebergs and defending the Islamic faith to weigh in on the true meaning of Christmas. The President and First Lady made a guest appearance on a television show this week, marking the 50th anniversary of A Charlie Brown Christmas. All well and good until the President offered his interpretation of the classic holiday cartoon. The president said that it teaches us that tiny trees just need a little love, and that on this holiday we celebrate peace on earth and goodwill toward all men. And Mrs. Obama chimed in and declared that is what Christmas is all about. Oh, good grief. I mean, these are the same people who wanted to toss a nativity out of the White House during their first presidential Christmas. With all due respect to the president and first lady, Christmas is about celebrating the birth of Jesus, not a tree. We already have a holiday for that. It's called Arbor Day. I'm Todd Starnes.
Tonight, a Christmas story, or is it a holiday story? It seems like you have to be careful lately with so many traditions stirring up controversy. But is it all going a bit too far? Here's ABC's Marcio Ocampo.
3, 2, 1.
Tonight, a debate over Christmas traditions, leaving many saying, bah humbug. Or in the case of one city councilwoman, I quit.
At this time in our country and in our world, it's important to be inclusive.
New Jersey's Charlene Story resigning this week after the city council voted to change the name of the holiday tree lighting ceremony to a Christmas tree lighting ceremony.
It's not a holiday tree. It's not a pear tree. It's a Christmas tree.
That city councilwoman later reconsidered, deciding to stay on. But all across the country, Christmas controversies are lighting up like trees. From the campaign trail,
If I become president, we're all going to be saying Merry Christmas again. That I can tell you.
to campus, some University of Tennessee Knoxville students upset with a university memo urging inclusion, saying, ensure your holiday party is not a Christmas party in disguise.
It's my God-given right to be able to have a Christmas party.
To coffee shops, Starbucks stirring ire by removing Christmas symbols from their holiday cups. Still, some say there is something we can all agree on.
Holidays are the holidays. We celebrate them, and I think it's all good.
Trying to make the housing conditions more welcoming for refugees, Norwegian immigration authorities have provoked a backlash within the country. Last week, the Norwegian Directorate of Immigration declared that all buildings to house the newcomers must remove religious imagery. Several Christian organisations agreed to follow the requirements and removed crosses. However, one Christian community centre that could host up to 1,000 refugees made a stand against the request and kept the crosses. We spoke to the head of the organisation.
We had to take down the cross, take down pictures of Jesus or things like that, and undress our localities because Muslims should come here. We have built our country on Christian fundaments, and why should we change this? People who comes to other countries should also understand we are guests in a new place, and we have to accept what is ruling in the places they come from. But I don't think that question has been so big for the people coming. It is more like the system here trying to make something very secular. But even Muslim people would say that the neutralism is maybe the worst. We want to have our culture, our traditions, but we are also welcoming refugees.
Well, the decision to make the buildings for refugees religion neutral was criticised on social media. One tweet suggested authorities didn't take the interests of citizens into account. Another pointed out that the cross in Norway's flag could also be offensive to the asylum seekers. And some posts dubbed the move as an unsuccessful example of political correctness. The reaction has not gone unnoticed by the country's authorities. They've dropped the requirement to remove crosses and pictures of Jesus from religious centres. However, the rule prohibiting religious services remains in place.
Just heard that something extraordinary will happen tomorrow, an event so rare and so history-making that President Obama has only done it twice in his entire time in office.
But as you say, really big breaking news out of the White House tonight. President Obama will make a rare address to the nation tomorrow night at 8 o'clock about what the government is doing to keep Americans safe.
President Obama, in only the third Oval Office address of his presidency, he called the massacre a terrorist attack for the first time, vowed to win the war against ISIS, and warned against turning that conflict into a war against Muslims here at home and around the world.
The president said the terrorist threat has, quote, evolved into a new phase, and for the first time, he called the San Bernardino massacre a terrorist act that was likely inspired by ISIS.
We have no evidence that the killers were directed by a terrorist organization overseas or that they were part of a broader conspiracy here at home. But it is clear that the two of them had gone down the dark path of radicalization. So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people.
Addressing the nation from the Oval Office, the president defended his administration's efforts to protect the U.S. homeland and his strategy to combat ISIS abroad.
Here's what I want you to know. The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us.
The president called for a review of the visa program that one of the San Bernardino attackers used to come to the U.S., and he once again called for tighter gun laws.
Our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, no matter how effective they are, cannot identify every would-be mass shooter, whether that individual is motivated by ISIL or some other hateful ideology. What we can do and must do is make it harder for them to kill.
We all know the problems, and we see. But take Paris. If a few people had guns on their belt, on their shin, in their jacket, instead of being slaughtered, you might have lost some. You definitely would have lost the bad guys. But it wouldn't have been hundreds of people, with many more expected to die. They're in the hospital dying now. And then you go to the tragedy that we just had in California. Nobody has a gun except the bad guys, the scum, the scum. They're scum. And nobody has a gun. Nobody can protect themselves. They got lucky that they left. They left because they didn't want to die. You know, it's a whole big hoax. They want to die. They don't want to die. They talk about they want to die. They don't want to die. They're chicken shit, believe me. They don't want to die. No, they don't want to die.
The president also answered his critics who called for a war against radical Islam. He instead labeled ISIS a cult of death that does not represent Muslims.
We cannot turn against one another by letting this fight be defined as a war between America and Islam. That does not mean denying the fact that an extremist ideology has spread within some Muslim communities. There's a real problem that Muslims must confront without excuse.
But the president urged Americans not to demonize Muslims in the United States, saying they are our friends, our neighbors, and our co-workers.
My fellow Americans, I am confident we will succeed in this mission because we are on the right side of history. We were founded upon a belief in human dignity, that no matter who you are or where you come from or what you look like or what religion you practice, you are equal in the eyes of God.
Moving on now, thousands of Muslims from across the United Kingdom have marched through the streets of central London to mark Arba'een. The mourners held placards condemning Daesh and called for the true teachings of Islam to be spread.
Arba'een marks the 40th day after Ashura, when Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, was martyred in Karbala. The day has been marked for centuries, allowing Muslims to remember the sacrifice that was made for Islam.
This procession has been going on for 35 years now, and the thousands of British Muslims in attendance are sending a very clear message that the legacy of Imam Hussein is just as relevant now as it was many centuries ago.
The march was awash with flags and placards condemning the actions of extremist groups like Daesh and highlighting the long distance between Islam and the actions of extremists.
At the end of the day, Islam doesn't condone any sort of acts of terrorism or violence.
This is an opportunity to spread our message that Islam is a religion of peace. Islam respects all the sects. Islam does not portray a negative image. Islam is a symbol to hold the humanity.
Has given Muslims across the United States even more cause for concern.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. Our country cannot be the victim of horrendous attacks by people that believe only in jihad. They have no respect for human life.
Fellow Republicans.
First of all, let me just say, Sean, I believe, I want to say something to all the Muslims that may be watching this that are confused and are afraid themselves. I want them to know that God loves them and that Jesus Christ died for their sins, and Christ will forgive them and heal their hearts. And they don't have to die in a jihad. They don't have to kill somebody else to please God. God loves them, and He will accept them through faith in His Son, Jesus Christ.
Well, Russia's defense ministry says it's surprised that US authorities have turned a blind eye to the photo evidence showing Daesh transporting oil to Turkey. Defense ministry spokesman Major General Igor Konashenkov said the silence of the US defense officials shows they're supporting Ankara's oil trade with the terrorists. US State Department spokesman Mark Toner has said that Washington has found no evidence of Ankara's involvement in smuggling oil across its borders. On Wednesday, the Russian defense ministry provided footage and satellite images showing Daesh transporting up to 200,000 barrels of oil in over 1,700 trucks to Turkey.
Moscow has to fully implement the Minsk agreement and work constructively with Ukraine to create the conditions for free, fair, and safe local elections to occur in Donbass. And Moscow eventually has to end its occupation of Ukraine's sovereign territory. Crimea is still sovereign territory of Ukraine.
Russia has deployed a submarine to the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea near the coast of Syria. The submarine is equipped with cruise missiles similar to those used by the Russians' Caspian flotilla to target ISIL militants, also known as Daesh, in Syria. Last month, Russia deployed missile cruises to the Mediterranean Sea near Turkey's border after President Vladimir Putin described Turkey as accomplices of terrorists. Tensions between Russia and Turkey raged on after Turkey shot down a Russian jet on the Syrian border. Russia began its airstrikes against ISIL in Syria back on September the 30th.
Tensions continue to simmer between Iraq and Turkey as Baghdad has vowed to use all means available if Ankara does not withdraw its troops from northern Iraq. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has put Iraqi Air Force on alert in response to Turkey's deployment of troops near the city of Mosul. Abadi ordered the Air Force to be ready to defend Iraqi soil. Iraqi Foreign Minister Ibrahim al-Jafari has also described the deployment as a violation of Iraq's sovereignty. Al-Jafari, who was speaking in a meeting with his German counterpart, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, warned Turkey to immediately withdraw its forces, adding Ankara will face all available options, including reference to the UN Security Council, if it does not withdraw its troops.
Just as Turkey claims it wants to preserve its own territorial integrity and prevent any violation of its sovereignty, Iraq wants the same. Thus, we deplore this act and urge Ankara to preserve its ties with its neighbors, which we believe should be built on mutual respect and common interests and not hostility.
Turkey deployed some 150 soldiers to Mosul last Thursday, saying the move is part of a routine rotation to train the Kurdish Peshmerga forces fighting against Daesh Takfiri terrorists, a claim denied by Kurdish MPs in Iraqi parliament.
It is not in the interests of the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region to allow any foreign forces to enter Iraq in contradiction with the recommendations of the central government. Training Iraqi troops must have a legal and constitutional framework and must be in coordination with the federal government.
Secretary General of Iraq's Badr organization, Hadi al-Amri, has also described the presence of any foreign ground forces in Iraq as occupation, saying they will be fought by all means if they do not leave Iraq immediately. Iraq has vowed to use all available options against Turkey if Ankara does not withdraw its troops from northern Iraq within the next 48 hours.
Thailand beefs up security and confirms the existence of a leaked alert from Russia that 10 possible Islamic State members have entered the kingdom. And the leaked police document was issued on November the 27th and has been appearing on Thai social media since Thursday. It says that 10 Syrians with links to Islamic State entered Thailand between October the 15th and the 31st. They traveled to 4 destinations, 4 to Pattaya, 2 to Bangkok, 2 to Phuket, and another 2 to unknown destinations. The memo also says the Russian Federal Security Service urged Thai authority to elevate security around sites linked to Russia or its allies taking part in airstrikes in Syria.
It's been dreaded here and in so many cities around the world. Cell phone video captures a terrifying scene at a London subway station on Saturday. A man armed with a knife repeatedly lunging at police after allegedly stabbing 2 people. Eyewitnesses say he was slashing and hacking at the neck of one victim and slashed the neck of another. Drop it! Police taser him. Take him. And then again, another 50,000 volts, and he finally drops his knife and they overpower him. Both victims survive, but Scotland Yard is calling the attack a terrorist incident. Media reports say the man shouted, "This is for Syria," before launching his frenzied attack.
Start with our top story this hour. Damascus has sent a complaint to the UN Security Council regarding a suspected Western coalition airstrike on army positions in Syria. Now, this is according to Sana, the Syrian state news agency. At least 3 soldiers were killed in the attack in the country's Deir ez-Zor province. Over a dozen more were injured. In a statement, the Syrian Foreign Ministry strongly condemned the airstrike as an act of aggression that goes against the UN Charter. Taleb Ibrahim, a political analyst from Damascus, told us that all the positions of the Syrian army in the area are well known.
The airstrike happened yesterday very late in the night, and at the area in which Syrian army is fighting ISIS, it was a little shock for us.
The airstrike was carried out in an area where there's a strong Islamic State presence. Is there a possibility that these Syrian government casualties could have been by accident?
I don't think that this is an accident, because the locations of Syrian army is very well known. Otherwise, the locations of the ISIS are very well known.
Now, the US-led coalition has denied that their forces carried out any airstrikes in the area. However, at the weekend, the US Secretary of State warned Russia and Iran against continued support for Assad.
If Russia and Iran stand as a bloc and allow Assad to simply stiff the process, and we get no transition at all, then it will be clear who the problem children are, and our options will be narrowed, and we will have to make some tough choices.
U.S. military official told the Associated Press the U.S. is quote-unquote certain that it was Russia that hit a Syrian army camp in the city of Deir ez-Zor. That airstrike killed 3 Syrian soldiers. I asked the State Department about the incident and whether the public can see any evidence that Russia did it. Here's what I got.
I'm not going to comment about operational matters from this podium. I would point you to the Defense Department, who obviously have been speaking pretty clearly on this.
Just to clarify, so you cannot confirm that Russia hit that Syrian army camp. Is that correct? You cannot confirm that.
I'm not going to dispute what the Defense Department's already said about that strike. What I can tell you from what I know is that it was certainly not a U.S. strike.
It's very rare to hear you reference us to an anonymous official. So can I just ask you, is it the U.S. government's opinion or belief that this was indeed a Russian strike that hit in Deir ez-Zor?
I'm not going to confirm operational or tactical strikes. I just won't do that.
There's controversy over another suspected US coalition airstrike in Syria that this time is feared to have killed 26 civilians, including children. The unconfirmed reports come from a monitoring group. The US says it's investigating the claims. It said the air raid targeted the village of Al-Khan in northwestern Syria, but it's understood that Islamic State controls are on the outskirts of that settlement, which, if correct, would therefore mean the rockets missed their militant target with devastating consequences. The incident's getting reported widely. It's also feared that the number of fatalities could rise further too. The response thus far from US Central Command is that it's looking at the credibility of the allegations.
We take all such allegations seriously and conduct credibility assessments of all information we receive regarding civilian casualties. If the information is deemed credible, we will investigate and publicly release the results of the investigation.
Reports of civilian Syrian victims in the anti-ISIL military campaign are adding then to the pressure on the US-led coalition. Just yesterday, Damascus accused it of hitting its army camp and killing 3 soldiers. That alleged strike was a separate mission carried out in the Deir ez-Zor province in eastern Syria. Damascus wrote to the UN Security Council condemning it as an act of aggression and calling for measures to prevent such incidents in the future. The US dismisses the allegations as I speak. Now let's go live.
Iran and the P5+1 countries begin their second joint commission meeting in Vienna. The two sides are set to discuss a draft resolution on closure of Iran's so-called PMD case at the International Atomic Energy Agency. The IAEA Board of Governors is scheduled to vote on the resolution on December the 15th. The IAEA chief recently handed his final report on Iran's PMD case to the governors. A positive vote will pave the way for the implementation of the July nuclear deal between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany.
Iranian engineers have built a 5-kilometer tunnel that connects north of Tajikistan to its south. The Istiqlal or Independence Tunnel, which is known as Anzob among the locals, is located 80 kilometers northwest of Tajikistan's capital, Dushanbe.
The U.S. Geographical Survey says the epicenter was located in the east of Tajikistan, 345 kilometers east of the capital. The depth of the earthquake was recorded at 30 kilometers. There are so far no reports of any damage or casualties, though Tajikistan's Emergencies Committee is working to establish the situation on the ground. About 280 people have died across the state of Tamil Nadu since it was hit by torrential rains on December 1st. The state, with a population of nearly 70 million people, is experiencing its heaviest rainfall in a century. As much as 345 millimeters of rain fell in just one day. The Indian Air Force dropped food packages to residents who have been stranded on rooftops for days. 10 columns of the Army, about 1,000 soldiers in all, are being flown into the city to add to the 9 columns already on the ground.
Amnesty International says Daesh terrorists are using weapons exported to the Middle East by the UK and some other European and Western countries. The human rights group has said in a new report that assault weapons and small arms sent from the UK to Iraq in the wake of the 2000 invasion may have ended up in the hands of ISIL. Based on the report, the terrorists have access to a substantial arsenal of arms and ammunition designed or manufactured in more than 25 countries, including the US, Austria, Russia, and Belgium. It notes that most of the weapons are likely to have been given to Iraq by various Western countries between 2003 and 2007. According to the rights group, these weapons have allowed ISIL to carry out a horrific campaign of abuse, including summary killings, rape, torture, abduction, and hostage-taking.
Well, the European Parliament calls on member states to be on alert for the possibility of a chemical or biological attack by Daesh terrorists. A new report by the European Parliament has urged all European governments and institutions to address the possibility of a terrorist attack using chemical, biological, radiological or even nuclear materials. The report also warned that the ISIL terrorist group has apparently manufactured rudimentary chemical warfare shells and used them on at least 3 occasions in Iraq and Syria. The report suggests that EU states should begin to equip their emergency crews with antidotes to a non-conventional attack and also inform their public about the threat of such attacks.
Well, it's the largest humanitarian appeal in United Nations history. The organization now asking for more than $20 billion to help people suffering around the world.
Because of extended conflicts in Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and South Sudan, the key drivers of humanitarian aid, the UN says 2016 will see more people fleeing their homes and from conflict, worsening an already unprecedented refugee and migrant crisis that we're witnessing in 2015. Already, the UN says 60 million people have fled their homes. And UN agencies also warn that humanitarian needs do not just target those people fleeing conflict, but also from climate change as well, including the El Nino weather pattern that is already devastating parts of Africa and South America, causing food shortages and droughts. Now, the big question is how realistic is this $20.1 billion target? It looks like it will be an uphill task to try and get this funding. Remember that 2015's appeal, the previous appeal for $19.9 billion was only half met with a funding gap of $10.2 billion. So the question is less about a willingness of the international community to step up rather than the ability of the international community to cough up more cash.
Syria have been suffering from years of war and death, with Islamic State leaving behind a deadly trail of destruction across the country, with corpses being left out to rot in the open. A flesh-eating disease is now spreading across the country. Known as the leishmaniasis disease, it's transmitted by the bite of certain species of sandfly. The symptoms include painful skin sores and ulcers around the bite area, which can take up to a year to heal. They leave scars, and the disease can, if left untreated, be fatal.
As a result of abominable acts by ISIS that included the killing of innocent people and dumping their corpses in the streets, this is the leading factor behind the rapid spread of leishmaniasis disease.
There were 53,000 cases of the disease registered in 2012 across Syria. The figure for just the first half of the following year was 41,000. And last year, over 22,000 cases were reported in Aleppo alone. Doctors believe that the disease will become even more rampant across Syria.
We have about 3 million people who are affected, but in some years to come, then there will be a lot of people that will be affected. We cannot compare with other countries because in Malawi people are poor, they rely on agriculture most of the times, and if these effects of climate change continue to look like that, not being addressed, then we are seeing that in the near future we'll have a lot of people who will be hungry, they will not have anything to eat, and also a lot of people who will be affected by floods, a lot of people who will be affected by droughts.
וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. נרות הללו שאנו מדליקים, הנרות הללו
From the city of peace that lives no peace, we send you all messages of peace. Unfortunately, today, and still, we are fighting for a new wall not to be erected and not to be built in Bethlehem. We are celebrating today with a very critical situation in Palestine. Martyrs, injured, still remaining walls, checkpoints, and mostly still the message of peace and the political solution of justice and peace is so away from the horizon.